I'm Lucian, and I'm working on a chicken game. It's a platformer, kinda like Jump King, where you gotta carefully charge your jump to move up the level. Though the mechanics are a bit different. You jump with the mouse, and besides the jump charge, you also tilt the character to shape the arc. Big up means more height, big forward means more range, and everything in between blends the two. It's my first game, so I went for a simple idea. Now, after more than 1 year on it, it was apparently not simple enough. I wanted to go faster, but I also have a full-time job and the chicken is a hobby, so finding time for it while still keeping up with social life, exercise, and everything else can be a bit tricky. In this and the upcoming videos, I'll catch you up on what's done so far, and then we'll try to build the rest together. Can I please have a dirty? My initial thought was to use a ready-made asset, animations and all, and just import it into Unreal. And there were chicken assets online, a lot of them, but they all felt like background props for farming simulators. I wanted something that looked fun and personal, something distinct, something that you can associate the game with. So I decided to model it myself from scratch. A small drawback was that I had no 3D modeling experience, but after doing the Blender Donut tutorial, I thought I was ready to jump straight in. I started by extruding circles around the sketch I made, then kept tweaking it until it looked more like a chicken. From watching other people model on YouTube, I noticed that everyone starts with this weird position with the arms stretched. I wasn't sure why at the point, but I just followed along. And by the way, the wings look a bit off, and that's on purpose. They will be hidden on the feathers, and this layout made feather placement easier as far as I could tell. I want to be honest, the fast forward makes it look simple, but it felt like rocket science to me. Even basic things like the eyeballs took real thinking to figure out. And last but not least, the wattles. Hens usually have smaller ones than roosters, but I sized them up a bit for a nicer wiggle. With the model ready, I started adding feathers. Plan A was covering the whole body, but this proved to be too much work and probably too many triangles. Plus, I wasn't sure what would happen if the body deformed. If, for instance, I add feathers like this, would we end up with bald spots when the chicken tilts? Do we then need to add even more feathers to compensate for that? So I decided I'd just paint the body to look feathered and add the real feathers only to the wings and tail. But once I added them, they just didn't seem to blend. Something was off. They just don't look like wings. So then I started reading a bit about chicken anatomy. Did you know that the wing feathers are actually layered? With this new wisdom, I started over and now I aim for something closer to real wings. It looks a bit weird. The T-pose isn't helping either. Makes it feel unnatural. And then the feathers, well, because of my learn-on-the-fly approach, there were some gaps, and they show up next when I start adding color. I'm honestly a bit embarrassed. I'd play with Photoshop as a kid, and more recently with Krita, and I was confident I can pull it off, but other than that, I didn't really know much. I didn't know what a texture was, what a material was, or the difference between them. I started with the eyes since they were a separate object and seemed simple enough, but I still took a moment to overanalyze them. After this positive experience, I moved on to unwrapping the body and adding a texture to it. To the best of my knowledge, these CUVs looked okay. It was only later that I realized that those small islands were separated incorrectly, and making it look right with this unwrap would be super hard. Hours and hours of manual work. First of all, you can see that this is overlapped in some places. If I paint here, it will cover both the leg and belly. If I'm painting this one, it will leave this empty spot here. It's just a mess. You would think that once I realized it was wrong, I would fix it. But I felt so overwhelmed and I just improvised and somehow made it work, telling myself I'd fix it later. I didn't fix it later. Because as I progressed, new problems showed up and going back to fix the old ones got harder and harder. Now I'm not even sure if there's an easy solution besides unwrapping again and repainting. The feathers were more straightforward, at least the unwrapping, but I did spend a lot of time picking a pattern that worked best. I didn't want it to be too boring, so I also added some variation. It was also hard to judge a texture alone, in isolation, so I kept exporting and re-importing in Blender to reassess until I found something that I actually liked. Ignoring the unwrap, I think I'm pretty happy with the result. I'll probably add some normals later to give it depth so it's not just flat paint, but that can wait. I lost a lot of time in a few places. If I started again today, I would change some things. Like, did I need to look into chicken anatomy? Players don't care if the chicken has precisely 10 primary feathers. Maybe I shouldn't have done separate feathers in the first place. I later learned that having lots of separate pieces with their own materials can increase the number of badge calls and hurt performance. Plus, giving feathers their own bones meant more rigging and more animation work. Maybe a single piece setup might have been smarter. Then there's the texture painting we just looked at. I spent hours trying to come up with the right pattern, but the game camera sits pretty far from the character, so you can barely see the striations anyway. And same story with the eyes. Another thing is, I approach things sequentially, like finish the model, then the animation, then the mechanics, then the level design. Maybe instead I should have iterated in short loops. Maybe I should have grabbed the first asset that resembled the chicken and just tested how the game feels. There were a lot of moments like this, time wasted on stuff that don't matter too much, or even stuff that's completely useless. Anyway, so to wrap it up, I think the chicken is not perfect, but we can work with it. Next time I'll try to animate it and bring it into Unreal. I hope you like this video, and if you want to catch the next one, don't forget to subscribe.